KNBR, the sports leader. Your faithful fix with your host Larry Krueger begins now.
And away we go. Hope everybody's having a fantastic November the 9th morning. Larry Krueger with you on The Sports Leader for 49er forecast. For the next hour, we're going to talk 49er football. Look ahead to tomorrow's game in Tampa. The Niners have already safely arrived in Tampa, and they will tee it up tomorrow morning in the morning window. Not the witching hour, as Scott Hansen would say. The morning window. The Niners in Tampa. And I'm getting very much a deja vu from last year coming out of the bye week. I feel like in a lot of ways it feels very similar. Last year, they coming out of the bye week, they added Chase Young as a defensive end. So they were excited about that. They were in Jacksonville against a Jacksonville team that had looked really, really good. So good that I remember Kyle Brandt from the NFL Network did this whole, the wrong team is favored today. This whole thing. Jacksonville should be favored over the Niners. Needless to say, he wasn't saying that at the end of the game. I think it was like 34-3. The Niners came out and they just took it to Jacksonville. And this kind of reminds me of the exact same spot. You've got the 49ers coming off the bye, adding Christian McCaffrey, who they have not had all year, one of the great offensive players in the game, on the road in the morning window against a nondescript Florida team that, some people think is pretty good. Some people don't think is very good. And I guess we're just going to find out. And I just think the Niners are going to have a big, big, big victory tomorrow. I really see a big Niner win. And I don't always, right? I'm usually the guy who's like, I don't know. I don't know, John. I don't know, Adam. I don't know. I'm a little worried about, the Tutu Atwell, or I'm a little worried about the Verticals, or I'm a little worried about Minnesota. I'm a little worried. I'm a worrier. I don't necessarily. My job when I scouted in the Canadian League was to provide. One of my jobs was to provide at the end of the week a scouting report of, if we're going to lose, how are we going to lose? And I used to present that to the defensive coordinator every Friday before the game. I'd be like, hey, he's like, where's that if we're going to lose report? And he was really adamant about it. And he would want me to go through all of the statistical data that we'd have accumulated, all the personnel evaluation, all the meetings, all the notes, everything, and just look for why we were going to lose, if we were going to lose. And so that kind of an exercise almost makes you hunt for, your weaknesses and things that could go wrong. But when I look at this game, I think the major overarching kind of thought in this one is that the Niners, not every game in the NFL is equal or fair. If you read the Warren Sharp article on rest at the beginning of the year, you know this all too well. The NFL prioritizes getting big ratings, big numbers. It's a TV show to them. So their equitable talk about fairness and all that all goes out the window when money's on the table. If you put money on the table, they'll fly a team in from Bangladesh if they can make a few extra ducats. I mean, then they'll have teams play 5 times in a week if they had to, if they meant enough money. I mean, they literally have sold out to the money. And so you have in a sport that generally is fair, you have good spots and bad spots. And a bad spot is what Tampa's in tomorrow. They played on Monday in Kansas City. The game went to overtime. Their defense logged 83 snaps on the field against Mahomes and company. Tampa Bay's defense logged over 40 minutes of field time on Monday. Then they had to get on a bird, fly back from Kansas City to Tampa, probably spend most of Tuesday rehashing what happened in Kansas City. The players didn't actually get on to the Niners and probably till Wednesday, maybe midday Wednesday, where the Niners have been resting in their beds, coming off the bye week. They could have put together a game plan for the Bucs 10 days ago and just refined it the entire time. So they're in this game is advantage 49ers, major advantage 49ers. Other team on a short week. You're coming off the bye. Other team just played overtime and tons of plays and all kinds of field time, and you're resting up and ready. So this one definitely, I think, on the surface favors the 49ers. Doesn't mean they're going to win, but on the surface, I think it favors the Niners. All right, what do we do in this hour? In the next segment at 10:15, in about 10 minutes or so, Jordan Elliott's going to stop by. He does an amazing job covering the Niners. He works for NBC Sports Bay Area. Really sharp young guy. He's a great follow on X, and he's just a fantastic guy. Watches a lot of film, knows football. Doesn't just kind of fly off half cocked with crazy opinions. He always can kind of support whatever opinion he brings to the table. He's just really one of the best young media guys in the Bay. and if you don't know him, you will. You will in time because he's that good. It's funny. I don't say that about everybody, but sometimes when you see a young person that has a lot of talent, you just know it. When I was doing the Stanford pregame show on KNBR 1050, there was this Stanford student who came up to me and he's like, "Yeah, I'm writing for the Bootleg." I'm like, "I never even heard of the Bootleg." He's like, "Yeah, it's this website. It's about Stanford. I know lots about Stanford and I'd love to come on your show." And I'm like, "Yeah, why not? We'll have you on." I had him on, thought he was pretty good. Said, "Hey, you want to come back next week?" "Yeah, we'll come back next week." Had him on again. I thought, this guy's pretty good. It was David Lombardi. It was David Lombardi, who's now covering the Niners, has, probably 100,000 followers on YouTube, and is working for the SF Standard and one of the more respected 49er media people there is, and one of the more heavily followed. So, I could see that Lombardi had huge talent way back then, and I can see the same thing with Jordan Elliott. So he's going to join us in about 8-9 minutes from now, and we'll talk a little Niners with him. Also, at the end of the hour, I'm going to let you hear my conversation from yesterday with Jake Moody. Caught up with Jake in the locker room. We were actually waiting for Christian McCaffrey, but he was working out, and Jake's locker is just right across from McCaffrey's. So we're kind of hanging out in the McCaffrey locker neighborhood. And I thought, well, what the hell? Let's talk to Jake. Nobody seemed to want to talk to the kicker. So I talked to him about his ankle sprain, the injury, how the Niners did without him, how eager is he to get back, the differences versus, wrenching your ankle on your kicking leg, which is what happened, as opposed to your plant leg. He felt very fortunate that it wasn't his plant leg, when that makes sense because, so he's a right-footed kicker, so his plant leg is his left leg. If he had blown out that ankle every time he went to plant with force to try to set himself up to balance, balance is a big part of it. And the exchange of, the footwork, it's a very, delicate tap dance that the kicker does, but there's a lot more emphasis or a lot more strain and force put on that left ankle than his kicking ankle. So he was relieved that it wasn't his left and it was his right. So anyway, we talked to Jake, and it's about a 7-minute interview or so. We'll let you hear that before we get out of here. If you have a thought on the game tomorrow, 808 KNBR is the number. I have a couple thoughts I want to share with you right here. One, the injury report is out, and it's kind of interesting on both fronts. One, from the Niners, Bosa, questionable, and he was a very limited participant in practice on Friday. Supposedly, Kyle said somebody bumped into him, and he's got a little bit of a hip pointer, which can be very painful. So Bosa, it was very limited, and I don't know what he's going to be able to contribute, and that is a major part of this game. Can the Niners put heat on Baker Mayfield? Well, Nick Bosa is going to have to be, the lead dog on that one. And he's going up against some pretty good tackles. Gadecki's a good right tackle. Wirfs is a phenomenal left tackle. So that's something to watch for in this game. How healthy is Nick Bosa? How much can Nick Bosa go? Can he play? And if he can play, how many snaps can he play? How effective is he? That to me is a major subplot in the game tomorrow is Nick Bosa, just because the injury was so late in the week. So he's questionable. Debo was in the blue jersey all week. He's questionable. I think he's going to go. I think he's going to have a fantastic game. Debo, to me, looked great in practice. Now, I don't know what other people are watching. I know he had the blue jersey on, but he didn't seem like he needed to have it on. He was moving incredibly well. So I think it's just like, hey, don't hit Debo during the week. Debo's going to wear the blue jersey, so nobody hits him during the week. But he's going on Sunday, and I think he will go. The other one is Malik Mustafa. Mustafa's got a calf injury. How tired are the Niners, by the way, of calf injuries at this point? But he's got a calf injury. So we may actually see Tayshaun Gibson, who was literally just signed, 2 days ago. But he knows the defense, and he attended the meetings. He was practicing this week. He knows this team. He knows this D. He may play. He may wind up having to play this week for Malik Mustafa. CMC is also limited this week. John Feliciano was limited. We'll see if he gets activated today. The Niners will make some couple activations from the practice squad later today. So those are the limited guys. And then as far as out, Kevin Givens was running on the side yesterday. He's got a groin strain. He can't go. He can't go this week. So you might see Khalil Davis, the newest 49er. He might be a go. Chris Conley, without Ayuk, Chris Conley is going to be an important guy for the 49ers this year. He can't go. He's out. Hamstring, I believe. Mooney's out because he's attending to the funeral services of due to the tragic death of his 1-year-old. And the 49ers, in a very first-class move, are just like, hey, take as much time as you need. Take as much time as you need. And that is the right way to handle it. And then Yatir Gross-Matos remains out. And they have hope that he's coming back, but not this week. So the Niners are beat up. But then you look at Tampa. Mike Evans is out with the hamstring. Chris Godwin's out with the ankle. Baker Mayfield, the starting quarterback, had a toe injury, did not practice Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, from what I was told. Jalen McMillan is out, the rookie wide receiver. Sterling Shepard, who was a key kind of cog for them at wide receiver last week, had a hamstring injury, I guess, going into that game and still played. He didn't practice this week. So I would imagine Sterling Shepard is going to go in the game because he went last week. And I guess the hamstring injury was hurt even before the Kansas City game. So expect Shepard out there, but he's not fast to begin with. And he'll be playing with a hamstring injury. Jordan Whitehead, their safety, was out this week. Vita Vea with a hip injury was limited. Bucky Irving with a toe injury was limited. So, the Bucs are not fresh. The Bucs are, hanging. The Bucs just played on Monday. This should be a major rest spot, a rest advantage. But the big question, and one that if you want to jump in here at 808 KNBR, and I think it's the ultimate question for the Niners right now. The numbers say the Niners are going to have a big second half run. The Niners under Shanahan win 40% of their games before the bye. The Niners with Shanahan win 70% of their games after the bye. So they typically are better after the bye. They're getting McCaffrey back. He's their best offensive player. They're getting Greenlaw back at some point, they hope, in the next few weeks. He's the heart and soul of their defense. Are the 49ers on the verge of their annual big second half playoff push Super Bowl run? Or are we all kidding ourselves? Are we all delusional? Are we not looking at the fact that, CMC's got 2 Achilles and that Greenlaw hasn't played a snap and that the D-line ain't that great and the O-line ain't a whole lot better and Ayuk's done for the year and CMC could go down in a flash of him in any moment. So basically, without any notice, he could be done for the year with double Achilles. So, I'm a little too close to it to really probably weigh in on this because I'm there every single day. And I do think the 49ers are on the verge of a second half run. But I've got buddies who are like, Krug, you're delusional. You're too close to it. All the indicators are that they're going to fall on their face. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? One of my buddies is like, dude, they can't even win 2 in a row. They win one, they lose one. They win one, they lose one. They win one, they lose one. That's their deal. And I'm like, yeah, I hear that, but you are getting back your best defensive, leader, I think, and a guy who's really kind of the tone setter of your D in Greenlaw. You are getting back Christian McCaffrey. You do have some winnable games in the second half on the schedule, though there's some tough ones too. Green Bay, travel to Green Bay, very hard game. Travel to Buffalo, very hard game. Detroit, any game against Detroit anywhere at this point promises to be a tough game. So they do have and they got 3 tough division games, rematches, and they've already lost 2 of the first. They lost to the Rams, lost to the Cardinals. So And they got to win all those games. They got to win all 3 of those division games. I mean, they got to compete, and they got to. This game against Tampa is a must-win game. But I do think they're going to circle the wagons. I do think that this is a team that has high expectations for itself. I do believe that they are going to kind of rise up and play better ball in November than they've played they've played thus far. And you say, well, Krug, why do you feel that way? I'm just looking at the numbers. Over the last 4 years, the 49ers in September and October, their 16 wins, 15 losses, and their turnover differential was -1. Over the last 4 years, between the months of November through January, they're 23-5, and their turnover differential is +24. So this is when they flip the switch. This is when they play their best ball. This is when they take the ball away. This is when they they protect the ball better on offense. This is their go time. That's what history tells us. I realize there'll be no Ayuk, and I realize the injuries with Greenlaw and CMC. But I see a team that's coming on. I think they're going to win convincingly this week. And I think by Monday, we're all going to be feeling a little bit better about their situation. All right, that's how I see it. But I'd love to hear from you at 808 KNBR, and we can sprinkle in a couple of your calls before the end of the hour if you want to jump in. Feel free to bang the number, 808 KNBR. But we'll take a timeout right here. Coming up next, Jordan Elliott stops by from NBC Sports Bay Area, one of the most underrated young media guys and football guys in the market. You're going to hear from him next. We'll hear from Jake Moody before we get out of here as well. Caught up with him in the locker room. It's a 49er forecast on a Saturday on the Sports Leader.
Second and goal, 4-yard line. Juszczyk was out wide. Now he comes inside a bunch with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Purdy looking that way, right. McCaffrey wide open. Touchdown! CMC!
He's been awesome these last 2 days, so hopefully that continues to go well, and expect to get him out there. And you never know for a setback or anything, but 2 days have been great, and expect to see him out there.
Larry Krueger's rocking the red and gold as 49ers forecast continues on KNBR, the sports leader.
Welcome back to 49er Forecast. Larry Krueger with you on a Saturday. Kyle Shanahan talking Christian McCaffrey, and CMC is back, and he'll be on the field tomorrow morning when the Niners take on the Buccaneers. Christian is, man, you could see yesterday, it's been tough. It has been tough. I don't know if people understand how things work. I was mentioning this to Tommy and Copeland yesterday, that when you're hurt in football, they isolate you. Like, you're on the field when the rest of the team's not. You're in the locker room when the rest of the team's not. I mean, you're like totally separate from the team, and I think it wears on guys. It's a team sport, and you get strength and energy from your teammates, and then when you're hurt, all that goes away, and you just got to rehab on your own. And it's thankless. It's painful. It's never fun. But he's back, and he'll be back out there tomorrow. And with us on the line to talk about it is Jordan Elliott, who does an amazing job for NBC Sports Bay Area, and he's with us on the UMA guest line to talk Niners Bucs. What's up, Jordan? How are you?
I'm doing great, Larry. How you doing? It's good to have football back. It feels like this bye week was a bye month with what's gone on in the last couple of weeks.
Seriously. And, I was looking at some of the numbers with and without CMC. The Niners with CMC, 14-5, and they're scoring touchdowns in the red zone 67% of the time. He personally accounted for 40% of their red zone production last year. Without him, the Niners have played 8 games. They're 4-4, and their red zone production drops from touchdown percentage drops from 67% to 49%. So I'll throw it to you. I mean, I know you're watching a lot of the film, and it's never one thing. It's always an assortment of things. But is the Niners' issue this year in the red zone directly related to Christian?
Yeah, absolutely. It really comes back to one thing. Like, I think the Niners' offense has evolved in a way where we've seen them really start to stretch the field vertically more under Brock Purdy, especially compared to the years.
We may have to. Why don't we do this? Why don't we see if we can reconnect with Jordan, because we have a kind of a bad connection there. So maybe Raf can reconnect with Jordan, and we can get him back on, because his broadcast line, or his line, is rough. So we'll see if we can reconnect with him. But it is interesting, CMC, Bosa, Jennings, Deebo, Malik Mustafa, Jake Moody, they all practiced on Friday. But Bosa was limited. CMC was limited. A lot of these guys are limited, and they're all going to go. Bosa, I think, is going to go. Jennings, Deebo. I'm not sure about Mustafa yet, but I think the rest of those guys are all going to go. So the question is, what are you getting out of them? Are you getting 100% Jake Moody? Are you getting 100% CMC? Are you getting 100% Bosa, Jennings, Deebo? We're back with Jordan. I'm sorry, Jordan. Your phone cut out on us, but we reconnected.
My apologies. I do think, Larry, that it does come back to just kind of one overarching thing where we've seen the Niners offense really evolve to a point where they're stretching the field vertically in a way that they hadn't before Brock Purdy took over, and they've had so much success doing that. But when you start to get into the red zone, obviously the field gets tighter. You don't have the room to really take the top off a defense. And what they've really missed is the horizontal spacing that you get from a guy like McCaffrey and the amount of stress that he puts on defenders, particularly at the second level. You not only have to respect them running the ball, but the ability to check down to him. They've gotten really creative with kind of, throwing screens, swing passes out into the flat and getting him into space, where we've really seen him be able to take advantage of those second level defenders. And while I think that Grendo and Jordan Mason have done a fantastic job in his absence, there's a reason why Christian McCaffrey was the Offensive Player of the Year last year. There's a reason why he's viewed as one of the best running backs of his generation, because it's just so hard to replicate the talent that he brings. So I think having that horizontal spacing is going to be huge for them when the field gets into those tight areas and you don't have the margins to really stretch a defense vertically.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The Niners lead. This kind of surprised me too when I saw this stat. The Niners lead the NFL in explosive pass plays. They've got 30 on the year. So, the people who are like, Purdy doesn't want to drive it down the field. No, Purdy does want to drive it down the field, and maybe sometimes at to a detriment. He might be a little tad over aggressive, to be completely honest. But the Niners lead the NFL in explosive pass plays with 30. But they also have the lowest yards after the catch in the league. This is a stat that they have been the league leader in for many years under Shanahan. So what do you make of that one? Is it as simple as they haven't had CMC and Ayuk wasn't quite Ayuk and now he's out? Or is there something more going on? Does it have to do with the fact that teams are playing the Niners more man coverage because Purdy struggles more against man than against zone? He carves up zone coverages. Is that related to their super low yards after the catch number?
I think it's a little bit of a mix of everything. I think obviously not having McCaffrey and Ayuk, like you said, it definitely hurts things because of their ability to impact the game with the ball in their hands. And I also think that teams are learning that if you do just sit back in zone, like, you're going to get carved up, as you said, by Purdy, and you're not going to be able to really dictate the terms out there when you're allowing the 49ers offense to really get into a spot where it's comfortable and it's able to operate in a space that it's been succeeding in for really the last 5 or 6 years. And that's why I think this evolution is so interesting, because I think that Kyle Shanahan has kind of just leaned into the fact that, okay, like, we're going to have to make some changes. We can't rely on this quick game that's, been, built on running after the catch and built on getting these quick timing routes. They're going to have to start building in some shot plays and taking some shots downfield. And as you mentioned, like, they've been very successful. They're doing it at a rate higher than anybody else in the league right now. I just think that there needs to be a little bit of balance, and I think that's something that will come with McCaffrey coming back, where maybe when that big play isn't there, Purdy will feel a little bit more comfortable checking down into the flat, taking an easy completion, knowing that he has this weapon that can really create and take, a 3rd and 12 check down and turn it into a first down because of the magic that he has when the ball's in his hands.
How do you see the evolution of this offense? Last year, they were much more under center and play action pass heavy. This year, they're in the shotgun. They're a downfield passing attack. They're in the shotgun 80% of the time. The play action numbers are down, despite the fact that Purdy's the number 1 play action passing quarterback in the league, both last year and this year, according to rating. What do you make of the changes that they've made? Why do you think Shanahan switched from an under center play action game to a shotgun, downfield passing game where he doesn't utilize play action nearly as much as he did even just a year ago?
I don't know if it's this simple, but I think it is fairly easy to maybe just chalk it up to the fact that they haven't had McCaffrey. And it becomes a lot more predictable, I think, when you have a player like Mason or Grendo back there, just because nobody can replicate the receiving threat that McCaffrey is. And I think that last year we saw the 49ers, line up in these formations where Purdy would be under center and you'd have McCaffrey in the backfield, but they would throw out, they'd have these quick 3-step drops. They were throwing a lot out of these formations. And I think that it really put defenses in a bad spot, because they had to respect the fact that they could also be running the ball. So they maybe would be out there in base personnel and they wouldn't really have the ability to dictate the matchups that they can maybe when they see Grendo or Mason back there, just because I think it makes it a little bit more predictable in what you're doing. So I'd be really interested to see if, when McCaffrey gets back into the full swing of things, if it is just a complete overhaul of the offense, or if it's just, the staff and Shanahan kind of adjusting to not having such a valuable weapon in McCaffrey.
We're talking to Jordan Elliott from NBC Sports Bay Area. I think one of the better 49er media guys in the market. I really do. Tampa, let's talk about Tampa's defense for a second. They blitz a lot. But, just talking to some of the offensive linemen this week, they said that, the blitz happy Vikings are quite a bit different than the blitz happy Todd Bowles Buccaneers. They have some similarities, but there's some differences. Tampa has ranked in the top 3 in loaded box rate in 4 consecutive seasons. They put that extra defender up in the line of scrimmage 56.4% of the time this year. And yet, even though they've loaded the box, they're not necessarily doing well against the run. Tampa's giving up 4.6 a carry, 5th highest in the league, and plus 98 rushing yards over expectation, 2nd highest number in the league. And this is when they load the box with that extra defender. And then I looked at some of the Niners numbers on it. The Niners against stacked boxes, 8+ defenders in the box. The Niners have faced stacked boxes this year, 53.6% of their offensive plays. It's the 2nd highest rate in all of football. And the Niners are averaging 5.2 yards per carry, 2nd best to Baltimore in the NFL against loaded boxes. And I asked Shanahan about it yesterday, and he gave me a really long answer where he said, sometimes the angles when you load the box are different. And if you can get beyond the line of scrimmage, there's big playability there, and you can get a chunk yardage run. Now enters CMC. He averaged over 5.5 yards a carry last year, but he went against loaded boxes a lot. He played like 75% of the snaps. What do you think? Are the Niners going to run the ball effectively against Tampa's loaded box? And just overall, what do you think of Tampa's defense? There's some big names on this defense, but the numbers say they're not very good.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I did a bit of a deep dive on that, and it really I can't pinpoint where the regression has come from, because in 2022 they had a defense that ranked in the top 10 in yards allowed. They were 9th, and they were 13th in points allowed, which is a very respectable defense. 2023 they were still top 10 in points allowed, but they regressed to 23rd in yards allowed. And then this year they're 28th in points allowed, and they're 30th in yards allowed. So I do think that the yards allowed is much more of an indicator of where a defense is at over a large sample size. And there has been a regression. They went from 9th to 23rd to 30th now. So there has been a bit of a pattern there over the last couple seasons. But when you look at the defense this year compared to last year, when they still had a fairly decent defense, the biggest absence really is Shaq Barrett, who led them in pressures last year with 56, no longer is on the team and is retired now. But Yaya Diaby has been pacing essentially that same pressure percentage through the first 8 games of the season. And, Carlton Davis is with the Lions now. He was good for them, but the Bucs secondary has been really good. The corners that they have been performing at a pretty high level. So I've really struggled to see where the drop-off is. I know Levante David's a little bit older, but to me, he's a guy who belongs in Canton one day. He's been one of the best linebackers of this generation. Vita Vea is arguably, top 3 interior defensive lineman in the league. Antoine Winfield's a really good safety. Like, they have the pieces, like you mentioned. I'm just struggling to see where the disconnect is here. And I don't know if it's just an issue of, not having the full season sample size, and maybe they just had a couple weeks where they weren't able to string it together. But the 30th in yardage, I think, is really concerning, because when you're consistently giving up that much yardage week to week, I do think that is much more of an indicator of a larger problem. So I think that we could be in a situation here where we see the 49ers moving the ball really well between the 20s. But if these red zone issues that have plagued the 49ers in the early part of the season come back to get them in this game, that really could be what decides it. Because the Bucs are showing like they're giving up this yardage. Like, they're easy to move the football on statistically. But if you're not able to capitalize on that, the way that their offense has been operating, the Bucs have a top 10 offense this year. You can't settle for field goals in this game. So I am really interested to see if the 49ers are going to shake red zone woes now that McCaffrey's back in the mix, because the numbers tell us like this Bucs defense is there for the taking. And I wish I had an answer as to why, Larry, but it's been a huge mystery to me as well. I've been trying to figure it out, and I just can't find an answer.
Oh, I mean, there's a strong disconnect here between the talent and the numbers. I mean, Vita Vea is, first round pick. I mean, he's if you don't know Vita Vea, I mean, he's like a angry Coke machine or something. He's like that wide. He's 350 pounds, and he's just the widest, biggest interior guy you're going to find, and he can move his feet. He can rush the passer. What's really interesting was when I watched their film, I like to study sometimes kind of what their rush plan looks like on their defensive line. And it's like an inverted rush plan. They're getting Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey are getting pressure up the middle, but Logan Hall and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka are getting very little pressure off the edge. So instead of having that kind of the quarterbacks kind of hemmed in, it's almost like the interior guys, get push, but then the quarterback can escape out of either side door. And then Levante David's a great player, but he's older. KJ Britt's a great run defender, but he's not good against the pass. So I would imagine Kyle Shanahan's going to make KJ Britt the conflict defender. Antoine Winfield is just an awesome player. I mean, he's one of the great young secondary players in the sport. Okay, so that's the personnel. But then when you flip it over and you look at the numbers, they're 28th in the league in points allowed per game. They're 30th in total defense. They're 19th in run D. They're 30th in pass D. So, I mean, they do have 25 sacks, which is top 10, largely because Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey, are really good interior rushers. But, I mean, defensively, you would think that personnel, they would be really good, but instead the numbers say they're not really good. So I'm eager to see what that, the Niners offense against the Bucs defense looks like. Let's flip it over and talk about the Niners against the Buccaneer offense. What do you expect here? Because you have no Evans, you have no Godwin. Baker's had a toe injury, didn't practice this week. Sterling Shepard is a very solid, sticky-handed receiver, albeit not a spectacular downfield guy, but he's got a hamstring pull. He didn't practice all week. The rookie receivers is hurt. I mean, I don't see, I know there are a lot of people like, this Tampa team's got good offensive numbers, and they're pretty good. I mean, they're 5th in points per game. They're 5th in total offense. But that's not this team. That's the team that they had three weeks ago. This team is nowhere close to a top 5 offense.
Yeah, and it's so hard to get a gauge on it, right? Because I think that they did fairly respectable given the circumstances on the road against Kansas City, who's a really tough defense, as 49ers fans saw a couple weeks ago. So I do think it's hard to just, overlook the guys they still do have, but it's also fair to, acknowledge that not having Mike Evans and not having Chris Godwin is a huge loss. And if you could really make them one-dimensional and you're able to stop, Bucky Irving and that rushing attack that's been pretty good for them this season, I think that it becomes very difficult to find a scenario where they're able to hang for a full 60 minutes when the 49ers pass rush is able to kind of tee off and get them consistently into these 3rd and long situations. So I think the early down success is going to be really, really important. If the 49ers are able to take away some of that early down rushing success from the Bucs, I know this isn't the same 49ers defensive line in years past, but it still is a very strong group. And I think that if they are given the ability to go down there and tee off, I really see a situation where it's so hard for me to envision how Tampa is going to be able to keep up. And especially if that Niners offense, as we talked about, is able to take advantage of some of the holes in that Bucs defense, I don't see a scenario where the Bucs can kind of win a shootout kind of game, if that's what it comes down to. So I really think that it really comes down to not allowing the Bucs to get that early down rushing success, control the clock, have time of possession. Like the biggest path to me to the 49ers losing this game is if they lose the time of possession battle and the Bucs are able to hang on to the ball a lot. And I think that really, again, just comes back to what are you going to be able to do against that rushing attack, and can you make them one-dimensional?
Yeah, no, I mean, Tampa's lost, some games now without Evans, without Godwin. They're giving up 34 points a game the last few weeks. To me, it's about Cade Otton. I mean, he's stepped up. He's their number one red zone threat. He's their tight end, the former UW Husky. They're going to use him in the slot a lot. They've used him a lot in the slot recently. And the Niners, and they use him in motion a lot. The Niners have struggled against slot receivers, 11th worst in the league. They give up like 83 yards a game against the slot receivers. So to me, it's going to be, can the Niners cover Cade Otton? And I got to think they got a decent chance to stop Cade Otton. I know he's sticky hands. I know he's been pretty good, but, they lost Evans and Godwin in week 7 against Baltimore. I don't think they've been the same since, to be completely honest. I like the Niners big in this game. I'm going to say 31-13 49ers. What say you?
I'm going to say I'll say 27-17, but I think that there's a little bit of a backdoor cover there. I think it's a much bigger lead, and maybe Tampa gets a touchdown in garbage time.
And do you think a big run's coming? I mean, the Niners are 9-1 in November since 2021, averaging 28 a game and allowing only 13 a game. Do you anticipate a big second half run, or hey, no Ayuk, guys are dinged up, it's not their year, they're going to be kind of what they've been all year: win one, lose one, win one, lose one? What's the second half going to entail?
I think they're going to finish 11-6. I do think that the stretch that they're going to go on is pretty rough coming up. They have to go to Green Bay, to Buffalo. Like, they do have some tough games left on the schedule that I think they're capable of winning, but I don't think this is going to be a 2022 situation where they just reel off, 10 straight wins to close the season, and they're just this, unstoppable juggernaut. Like, I still think there will be a couple speed bumps maybe down the stretch, but I think that this is a team where the record, I understand you are what your record is, but like a couple of these games, if it's not just for a couple big lapses and big moments, like this is a 6-2 football team in all likelihood. And I think we're viewing them a lot differently than we are at 4-4. And I think that getting McCaffrey back and getting some of these guys back who've been out really does give them that mental boost as they are going down the stretch. And it really will lift this team up. And at the end of the day, I think that it became very clear that the 1 seed probably wouldn't be in play for them. This is a team that probably would have to go on the road in the playoffs should they get there, which I believe they will. And I think when you look at the talent from top to bottom, as long as Purdy's healthy and as long as some of their other blue chip players are out there, they have a chance against anybody on any given Sunday. And I know that's very cliche, but that's really all you could ask for when you do get into a position where you're going to have to go on the road and win a couple playoff games in all likelihood. And I think this team's capable of doing it. And it really comes down to matchups and where you're going, obviously. But outside of Detroit, I don't think there's anybody in the NFC right now that I'm looking at where I'm like, yeah, this team is just a bad matchup for the Niners. I don't think that they could really go toe-to-toe with them. Like, I think that they match up really well with pretty much everybody. And I could also envision a scenario where they go into Detroit and win a playoff game if they have to. So I think that they have a fighting chance. And when you're sitting at 4-4 at the midpoint of the season, to be able to have that level of optimism going forward, I think is huge. And I think the players share it too, because they've lived this second half surge, like you mentioned, in years past. Like, this isn't a new thing to them. They've experienced it and they know what it takes. And there's a lot of veterans in that room that know what it takes to win in November and December going into the playoffs. And I think they'll be able to do it.
Yeah, it's go time. Hey, Jordan, awesome stuff, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Larry.
Jordan Elliott, fantastic follow on X at @splash_cousin. He's fantastic. We'll take a timeout. Jake Moody, Niner kicker, caught up with him in the locker room. We'll hear that next on the Sports Leader.
faithful. Larry Kruger's rocking the red and gold as 49ers forecast continues. On KNBR, the sports leader. Sports leader.
All right, we're here in the Niner locker room with Jake Moody, Niner kicker, and man, the ankle injury looked really, really bad, but here it is a few weeks later, and you're back out there.
Yep.
Miraculous recovery. How did the rehab go?
Rehab went well. Just put a lot of time and effort into it, making sure that I didn't want to speed through it necessarily, like rush anything, but just made sure I did everything that they told me to do and healed up pretty quick. I guess that's a perk of being a younger guy. But yeah, feel good, feel ready to get back out there.
There was a baseball play a few years ago with Buster Posey where Scott Cousins bowled into him. I don't know if you ever saw that, but it almost very, very similar, but it was dirt and it snapped his foot. Do you feel like the surface kind of protected you a little bit from any kind of catastrophic?
I broke that same leg.
Oh, did you?
Making a tackle, just very weirdly similar. Just kind of rolled up underneath me, broke my fibula. So I wonder if that had anything to do with, since I had already twisted it that way, like maybe, that had some effect where it didn't, snap again, like it was already bent that way. I don't know, but just very lucky it wasn't worse, and hopefully I learned my lesson not to try to fit up.
Don't be a hitter on special teams.
Like
yeah. But at the same time, you're a football player. You got a helmet on.
Yeah.
You got to make a play, right? Yeah. So if it happens again, it happens again, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to shy away from making a play. I'm not going to, think about my job security and stuff like that. What people might say about kickers, like I'm going to try to bring the guy down the best I can, and just so happened to got injured doing that. But yeah, I'm not going to shy away from anything. If I need to make a tackle to try to help the team, I'm going to do that. And do that to the best of my ability.
Yeah. If I roll that same ankle, it probably takes me a lot longer. What kinds of things do they have in here for you to speed that up? Are you doing electric stuff? You hot tub, cold tub? How do you speed it up?
Yeah.
Get it back faster?
They got a bunch of, fancy machines in there, like electric stem machines and like different heat, like laser kind of therapies and stuff like that.
Does it work?
I don't know, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm, I think, just over 4 weeks out from the injury, and I healed up pretty well. And I don't know if it's because of the machines or if it's just natural or what, but I was making sure that I did everything that they said would help, and I guess it did.
When you got hurt, did you think that you could get back this soon, or what were the original estimates?
Original estimates, it's kind of hard to tell with an injury like that. They said, it could be anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks maybe. Then, you get another opinion that says, it's maybe 3 to 4. And so I figured it'd be kind of somewhere in the middle there. I think I got back a little sooner than I thought. Happy that, it was sooner than I thought rather than later. Worked out pretty well, I think.
Was it better or worse that it wasn't the plant foot? Because the plant foot is kind of the weight bearing.
Yes.
But it is the kick is part of your. I don't know. Would it have been better or worse if it had been the other one?
I think it's a lot better that it was my right.
Okay.
Because the plant foot, like you said, that's the weight bearing. You're really running and landing on that with a lot of force.
It's got to withstand that force.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. If you look at like a field after a game, you can tell exactly where I've kicked.
Oh, really? It's a little divot.
If you're looking, there's always a little divot just from how hard I'm planning on that left foot. So, glad it wasn't the left. I guess the only issue with the right is just the contact, and that hasn't been a problem at all. So, it's worked out well.
The other guys came in and did a nice job. Wright made all his field goals. Anders made 5 of 5. Were you able to kind of give them some moral support over the last couple of weeks? Because that's a hard thing to do, right? Walk into a situation and be perfect.
For sure, yeah. Especially, kicking here is not, one of the easier stadiums to kick with the wind. It can get pretty funky in there. So just kind of giving them little tips, here and there, like, hey, the wind might change at halftime. So, whatever you see in warm-ups might not be the same in the second half. Just, be conscious of that. And, just day-to-day life, going to practice, meetings, all that stuff, trying to help them as much as I could. Just make it like a smooth transition and make sure that they can perform at the best of their ability, help the team win. That's what I tried to do, and they did a really good job of that.
I didn't realize how big of a deal it would be to not have you. I mean, obviously they made the kicks. That's great. But you can kick it through the back of the end zone, and they can't. And in this rule change world, that's huge. I didn't realize how big that was, especially since every other team in the league is kicking it through the back of the end zone. So your coverage units, man, they probably never appreciated you ever this much, have they?
Yeah, I mean
that's a major advantage to kick it through the back of the end zone, isn't it?
It can be, yeah, for sure. I think we got good guys out there that, can make plays, whether the kick is, deep in the end zone or short. But, yeah, I mean, if you can take any, guessing out of it, any chance of, a big return and just hit one deep, I think, that's obviously the safer bet usually. So that's what I'll try to do is, just try to give the defense, good field position, not risk any huge returns. And, obviously it might depend on the game plan. It might change, but for the most part, I think just trying to kick it deep with this new rule is probably the new, thing that everybody's doing.
Much preferred for sure. Last one for you. You seem like you were in a real great rhythm. I don't know. I mean, I watched y'all last year. In rookie year's a tough year, right? Ups and downs and learning the whole thing. But this year, you just seem like your confidence level is on a whole new level. Mm-hmm. How would you describe your year before the injury?
Yeah, I thought, like you said, got in a good rhythm. So hopefully I'll just kind of pick up where I left off. And, like you said, rookie year can be tough. Not just the kicking aspect of it.
Just life and all the adjustments.
Moving across the country.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, figuring out where to live, get adjusted to the NFL lifestyle. So, now that I feel like all that's kind of settled in and I can just focus on what I need to focus on, which is just making kicks, made it a lot easier, a lot smoother this year. Hopefully I'll just kind of pick up where I left off.
Hey, man, good luck in Tampa. Thanks for a few minutes.
Thank you.
Jake Moody. There you go. Niner kicker Jake Moody from the locker room. Good guy. And he was having a really good year before the injury. So hopefully, and it isn't it's the ability in this game right now to kick the ball through the back of the end zone and not have anybody return it on you is huge. And Bucky Irving had a 46-yard kickoff return last week for Tampa against Kansas City. So kicking it through the back of the end zone will be much preferred on Sunday, and that's something the Niners haven't had the last few weeks. So good to see Jake back. That's going to do it for us. Key factors tomorrow, Brock Purdy can't turn it over. He's 3-0 this year when he doesn't turn it over, 15-0 in his career when he doesn't turn it over. He can't turn it over. That's number one. Number two, Tampa's allowed 55 receptions to opposing running backs, second most in the NFL. Look for the Niners to throw it to their backs out of the backfield and have a lot of success doing exactly that. That's going to do it for us. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Join me tomorrow. I'll be with Adam and John Lund on the 49er pre- and post-game show. Up next, though, is Just Dubs with JD and Greg Silver as they look back at last night's crushing defeat against the Cleveland Cavaliers and look ahead to their tilt tomorrow with OKC. So Just Dubs with JD and Greg Silver is next. Thanks to Raph. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Jake Moody. Thanks to Jordan Elliott. Have a great day. You're listening to The Sports Leader.